And so to see that initiative out there, highlighted is something that I'm very excited about, and to see how well that turns out. And I also like the Spanish and English Citizen Academy, and also the Essential Spanish for LEO. I think that's vitally important within the changing demographics as we see them right now happening before our very eyes. The way that you are addressing that particular demographic is I feel very proactive, and so I just wanted to again encourage you and thank you for the leadership role that you've taken. Continue to go along the lines that you're going, and I wish you much success. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Chief. Thank you. Oops, I see Commissioner Kane.
Well, Harold beat me to it. I think that in order to get our kids in the high schools, the junior highs, and let them shadow people and show them what they're doing. And I was just asked about the summer academy earlier last week by police officers. So I appreciate what you're doing. Everybody said pretty much what I said. I'm just glad you're here.
And Commissioner Kane, on that summer cadet program, we are looking at hiring 18 kids for that.
18 kids from Wyandotte County, right?
Oh yeah, they have to come from Wyandotte County.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Chief Oakman. Again, please come see us again soon, but I do appreciate the report.
Thank you.
All right. Obviously, that was an information only item. And the last item is the blue sheet item, a request for approval to submit Mid-America Regional Council grants for the 25-26 federal fiscal year. And Jeff Fisher is still with us. And Jeff, go ahead and present these grant items for us, please.
Okay, thank you. Troy Shaw is also, he's going to do the majority of this, but I'll introduce him. You may know Mark runs these opportunities every 2 years. And so it's that time of year. And so Troy's going to show you a presentation and a list of projects that have been scored and ranked. And then we hope to get some direction from the standing committee on how to move forward, what projects to go with. Troy?
Yep, thanks, Jeff. This is Troy Shaw, County Engineer. I'm going to share my screen. All right, we see that?
Yes.
So I'm going to give you a quick background on Mark for any commissioners or anybody in the public that's not familiar with Mark. I'll gloss over that pretty quickly to get to the meat of the conversation, and feel free to ask any questions about it as we're moving through or at the end. I'd be glad to go back. Mark is the Mid-America Regional Council, and it is our transportation planning group for the KC metro area. Every 2 years, as Jeff noted, they put out grants. Basically, the federal government gives us state money, and since we have a metropolitan planning commission in our area, those funds are distributed through Mark and then distributed out to the cities in the area, and we are one of those cities. So as Jeff noted, we're kind of at that time of the year or every other year where we do the pre-application phase due April 1st for the projects that we want to submit. Then Mark will review those, and we'll follow that up with another submittal in the summer for the technical side of the application, and then they make their final decisions that winter or this winter, I guess, and then we find out what we get. So just a quick background on, in 2021, this is roughly the amount of funding that was given out by Mark. So I kind of put that out there just to show that it's not a huge amount if you're looking at all the cities in the area. And also there's a note on there that with those pluses, we don't know, there's been talk that with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, that there may be additional funded added to this too for projects, but we don't know that at this point. So just wanted to note that these were the numbers from 21. There could be more that could change. Typically, Mark advertises projects as a 80-20 match, 80% federal, 20% local match. However, on top of that, there are other costs to consider. Design right away, utility relocation, public engagement. The Mark fees really cover the construction and construction inspection. So a lot of times these projects turn into more of a 70-30 to 50-50 match as we're looking at it. And you'll see when we look at the projects we scored those with a 40%, just estimated 40% match when we scored those to make sure that we fund a project adequately. As we noted, this is getting ready to be phase 1. April 1st is the deadline to submit. Then phase 2 this summer. If the initial applications make it through the screening process and through the committee and score well enough, they'll move on to the second phase. Couple of things to consider when looking at the projects. We just kind of noted some things that Mark looks at historically when they look at these projects, and that's kind of how we selected the list to give us a scoring basis to look at from the overall list. And as we noted, this is an overall list. However, I will note, thanks to Mr. Murray, Central Avenue Bridge is not on here. That kind of leads to the point of the major bridge structures that are not on this list because they are not possible to fund with the funding that Mark puts out right now for this grant. Now, those are being looked at for other grants. The Central Avenue project, for example, has been mapped and scored. It's just not on this list because this was the first filter of looking at all the projects on the list that may qualify for the grant. So, for example, the Central Avenue Bridge got filtered out to start with on this one. So here's the meat of the what we're going to talk about. So these are the projects that came out of that list that qualified based on the criteria that I noted a few slides ago that Mark typically looks at that would fit the best in. So this will kind of get Robbie can jump in and help me if I say something wrong about the scoring system. So what we did is each project has a total project cost in that field, and then we took a 40% local match for the scoring system. So that's the funds that Robbie used to score the projects off of, is the what we need from a local match. We're assuming that if you get this grant, you'll have to cover 40% of that total cost. So that's how the scoring system works. You'll also notice on a couple of these that are at the top, local match is 0. That's not necessarily true. However, both of these two projects already have funding currently funded in the UG's budget. So what we said here is if we can take existing projects that we already have and expand on the scope of those projects, make them better, longer, bigger projects, and utilize the funding that's already in the budget, we wouldn't be increasing the funds needed to fund projects in the future. And we could get more funding to do these projects and make them bigger and do more. So if you have questions about how that works and how our mindset worked, come up with that. That's just how those ended up there. They're projects that were there and we already had projects in the area. So it made sense to put them there. Another thing you'll look at on this is are these projects scalable? Mark likes to ask that question, which basically means, let's take this Leavenworth Road one, for example, $17.5 million. Let's say they don't want to give us $17.5 million minus our match. So let's say they only have $5 million they can give us for that. But we already have some money in the budget plus that $5 million. This project's scalable from what it shows here. We can cut blocks off and still do the project. It just won't be as big as it was. So when we put these out, we noted the full project cost because that's where we started with. So that's kind of where that goes. This is to the question earlier about local master plans. Commissioner Ramirez was asking, we are looking at that when we look at if they're funded. That's one of the criteria that Mark will ask for, along with if it's in their 2050 plan. And that helps get points with the project too, if it's already in one of our local master plans. So Mark does consider that. And we looked at that, and Gunnar Hand, our planning director, helped just make sure we had help us fill that category out. So this is the scoring system. These are in the order they scored, and I will say they score relative to each other. If you want more information on that one, Robbie's going to have to explain it because he's a lot smarter than I am. So basically what that means is if we took a whole nother set of projects and put this one project with those, they may have, it may not be 4.01 as the score. It may have a whole different number because it's scored relative to the project set it's with, which is why we wanted to reduce the projects to ones that seem to be eligible for mark funding to score against each other and not score against every project in the whole city. So that's really all I have. I'm open for questions. And like I said, we just put the list together and we're looking for your input as to what you think we should submit for. And I'll note that if you come out of this and say, I want to do one project out of this, and then it goes to commission, and that one project's approved, but we want to talk about other ones, we could start working on that one project. But by Friday, March 18th, I put at the bottom, I would like to have whatever the final answer is, so we have time to prepare the applications and make sure we get good applications in. So that's all I have, and I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you, Troy. So we have hands up in this order, Mr. Levert Murray, and then Commissioner Ramirez, and then Commissioner Johnson. So Levert, go ahead. And I think we've lost Levert now.
Just needs to unmute
Oh,
himself.
there you are. Go ahead and
Yeah,
unmute.
okay, I'm now off mute. Thank you. Troy, you indicated that the Central Avenue Bridge would not qualify for these funds. What causes it not to qualify, if I might ask?
I mean, just to start with, it would be, that's a $60 million replacement, and the maximum funds that we have, I noted earlier previously, were nowhere near that. So that's the main reason that we would start with. And then if you also look at the criteria that Mark looks at, it doesn't fit a lot of the criteria that they focus on for this grant specifically. So that's where we got to that answer.
This is Jeff Fisher, if I might jump in. Levert, we have the Central Avenue Bridge, and then we have Cesar Chavez Bridge, two major structures. And those are typically going to be an infra grant or a build grant. They're just the size of those projects, as Troy indicated, with the limited dollars in this program. You'll typically see these types of projects that are on the screen now. And so we would recommend that if the commission wants to pursue federal dollars for Central Avenue Bridge replacement, then we would want to look at build or infra grants.
Yeah, and of course, as I indicated, we were talking with the feds about a number of grant sources, but didn't want to get and advance this project only to find that we've not listed it as a priority concern. And because of that, it's turned down. So that's why I continue to bring it up.
Sure, understood.
Thank you, Levert. And I would agree, that in some way, shape, or form on some list, we do need to see actually both those bridges, Jeff. We can cuss and discuss, but I think the commission believes the bridges are important. Commissioner Ramirez, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff and Jeff. I think this is the first time I've gone through this, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. Troy, if you could go to I believe it's the second slide that talks about the overall funding overview. Could you, since this is my first time going through this, can you describe what those funding sources are and what those grants are and what they do?
I will do my best. So the STBG, they've changed the name recently. It used to be the STP, so it's Surface Transportation Block Grant, I believe, is what it is now. So this is probably the one. I'll give you examples like Leavenworth Road right now that's under construction. I believe these funds came from the previous version of this account. So that's the type of project we're looking for here. Transportation alternative. Those could be as it states, alternative types of transportation, not necessarily vehicular transportation. So usually a little smaller. Sometimes you can get like safe routes to school projects out of that one. Then the CMAC is congestion mitigation. Oh, Gunnar would know what that one is. But it's also, you could do like the bike share projects could come out of that one. Other projects similar to that. So I don't know if that helps, but that's a quick overview of kind of what those pots of money are.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that does help a lot, because I know former Commissioner Phil Bruck, always made sure to ask staff to break apart the acronym so that people would understand. And so especially since this was my first time going through this, I definitely wanted to make sure what did what. So that does answer my question. So thank you, Troy.
Sure.
Troy, on that screen, those dollar amounts, is that the total funding pool or the amount that we might be able to receive?
That was the total from 2021.
Okay.
Like I said, we don't know if they're
sorry.
going to add more, but
Got
that was the numbers from 21.
And so we may win, for example, when we acquired the Leavenworth Road reconstruction money, we won the grant, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. Troy, can you take me back to the scoring page? I just want to get a point of clarity here. I heard you say that we score those relative to each other as opposed to the entire list. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. And if you want more, I'm pretty sure Robbie's still on this call and he could explain that a lot better than me since he developed the system as to how that works. So
okay.
I just know that if you add another project in there, it changes the scoring.
Right.
Because they're all scored next to each other.
We're scored next to each other. So I guess the question that I had is then if I understand that process, but then it sounds like we have to, well, you all determine which projects of the eligible projects best make sense based on the criteria that Mid-America Regional Council has put out there. And then once that is done, then we score it next to each other. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, and the reason we do that is because we can put, and I'm sure Robbie has this, a score for every project, but what the general score is the score with these numbers only. So if we're scoring it with these numbers, it's going to be different than scoring it with these. And when we get a grant opportunity, we have to rescore it with what would be the city's responsibility for cost if we were to get the grant, which turns it to these numbers instead of these. So that's why we have to do it for every grant, we have to rescore it.
So then to bring my thought hopefully full circle, there could be projects out on the list that could potentially score higher than the ones that are reflected on this particular list. I might be getting and I don't like getting, me and Commissioner Bynum, you know that I don't like to get too far down into the weeds because I get stuck.
If I could speak to that, Commissioner, we're interested in scoring these based off of the delta in the cost of the project if we won the grant. And since only a certain number of the projects are eligible for this, it really only modifies that input factor for that list of projects. So, and it also makes it easier for us to present a slide because theoretically, in Public Works' opinion, every road is a project.
Right.
So we have to present a reasonable list that is actually applicable to the grant and show the delta in the cost, because that delta in the cost is what's used to compute the return on investment score and the cost analysis score that we've discussed earlier in a different presentation.
And I believe that this process that we are going through, that we're presenting tonight, has been a fairly successful process in terms of our ability to secure those grants. Is that a correct assessment?
I think and Robbie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure when it was built, but I'm pretty sure this is actually the first full implementation of the whole scoring system for the grant application process.
Okay.
I think we roughly used it when we first did, because it was 2 years ago for the MARC grants.
Yeah.
So I think it was generally used as a, hey, here's what we got and here's kind of how these score, but it wasn't as refined as this at that point.
Okay. Well, but it worked though. So
yeah,
I'll pull back on that. I see other hands up, and I'll yield the floor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's go with Commissioner Markley.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. So I'm excited to see some projects on this list that have long been discussed by this commission. So my question is, I know with some other grants, well, we were just talking about that last set that went through a full commission and whether we should apply for 1 or 2 or 5 or how many we were allowed to apply for. Is there a limit on how many we can apply for, and should we be, narrowing this down, or can we apply for the whole slate, or are there advantages and disadvantages to handling the length of our list?
Technically, you could apply for as many as you wanted. I don't know that that's probably the best thought, because once you start doing it, you spread yourself thin, and sometimes hey, well, we can do that. We'll give you 100,000 here and 100,000 here and 100,000 here, which doesn't get you any projects, actually, or it takes the focus of, and this is all just from having conversations and sitting through the meetings. Sometimes if someone applies for too many projects, it just goes over everybody's head and they go to the next person, right? Well, they're just trying to get everything and we don't pay attention. That's all just, who knows how someone's going to take it, but I would think picking a few that are your strongest candidates and the ones you're most want to focus on. And also, if for some reason they give us $100 million, that means we have to come up with funding to match it. So, then if this act goes through and they get $100 million to give, and we submit a bunch of projects that if we got them all, have no way of funding, then it doesn't look good for us to have to give all that money back. So
I would be interested to see, I'm trying to sort it in my head, but I'm maybe not capable of doing it that quickly. I'd be interested to see the chart that you have up right now, sorted to show us the high, and then sorted by local match. So what are the highest ones? What I want to know is, what are the highest ranking ones in the projected MARC ranking with the lowest amount of match required? That's the information I'm after.
I agree. I can't sort it that way because this is a PDF you're looking at, but just from looking at it, obviously the first two have zero local match in quotes because it's already budgeted and funded in our budget. So there is a local match, but we're already spending it. And then you've got 600,000, so there's a couple of these that are interesting too when you look at it. So Quindaro, this is a long project. This is a big project. If you look at it, it's $23 million estimate for a total project cost. That being said, it's also scalable. So if it was submitted, it could be scaled back to a mile as opposed to 4 miles. So it's basically, the way this is set up is these local costs are 40% of the total project cost. So if you're looking at one that's scalable, you could scale it down to whatever limit it could be, and we could only build a certain amount, and then our cost would be 40% of whatever that is.
So you said you think we should apply for a few. Can you put a few into numbers? Like, we need to narrow this down to 3, and we've got what, 9 that are ranked high. You're giving us too much to work with here.
Yeah, so I'll say, so historically, I'm trying to think, we've gotten 3-ish projects a year roughly in and out of this. Some of them are really like small ones, like, so we could, for example, Safe Routes to Schools in here. That's a different funding pot than some of the other ones, so it might be good to apply for that one. That being said, the location of this, because that's where the school we had been working with, just so happened to overlap with the location of this. So that could be a good or a bad. Maybe you get them both. It's 2 pots of money, so you can reduce the funding from one, which could add money to another project somewhere else. So there's a lot of games that MARC plays when they start looking at how they put funding to different cities. So there's opportunities left and right, but I think we typically get around 3 to 4, sometimes 2 to 4. Melissa, you're shaking your head. I think that seems about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've seen for the last number of years on these at the unified government. I would say that, you know, staff has done historically very well, though we haven't engaged the commission in this path before. So it was something new, given all the work that you've done on ranking and rating systems with us over the last number of years. But typically, we'd like to come to you with 3 or 4 that we think will score well and know that they meet all of our internal metrics and measures. So I apologize, Commissioner Markley, it is a bit overwhelming. And I think we're just trying to see how you guys want us to move through these going forward.
Well, it's great information. And I actually like the way you have it sorted here, where you're showing us our internal score, like what did our internal scoring system say was most important? You know, so with what you just said in mind, I mean, maybe we look at applying for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th would be that safe routes to school one that might, like you said, comes out of a different pot. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here about what you walk away from this meeting with. Anyway, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. And I'll also note, so we've got these few down at the bottom here, the CMAQ, the bike share expansion. So we put bike shares out. I think Gunner's actually getting ready to do that right now, pretty soon. So it's a continuation of that. It's the CMAQ pot of money, which that fits really well. So part of it would be to look at that and see if we want to do that as well. I mean, it's kind of one of those that if there's interest, we'd like to know, especially for some of these smaller ones that may end up in a different pot of money where we're not submitting anything for. So we might as well. If there's something like that. A lot of that stuff I'm not going to know necessarily until we start the application process to know exactly what fits into what category, because they change it up a little bit every year. So March, I think the end of this week, they'll open up the application process. So I'll be able to see what it's actually supposed to be.
And Troy, these are the ones that we have people go and vote on from the governing body too, as well, because we take those support opportunities to kind of beef up our interest from the body that is reviewing these.
Commissioner Markley, if I may, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. We mentioned strategy a little bit here, and I think as Ms. Steven noted, you know, historically we've sort of said, point us in the right direction. You've asked for more detail, which you see here. Again, you have to remember this is 3 different categories. One thing to think about in the background that staff takes into consideration that you really can't score here, for instance, is CMAQ funding is typically, the congestion mitigation, air quality is typically underperformed. Not many people actually compete for that money regionally, because as a region, we think about transportation as getting bigger as opposed to reducing demand, if you will. So for instance, if the 6th Street project were to happen, that would connect us for the first time to the Riverfront Heritage Trail, to the Central Avenue bike share program, to the 10th Street bike lane that goes north-south through our community, as well as then linking up to all the levee trails. That is a critical gap in the system that would look very good to Mark if we also came in with CMAQ money asking for bike share expansion, because then we could deploy bike share along that now fully complete system. So those things are hard to score. Those things are the kind of direction that we're looking for when you want us to pick a lane, if you will, and really focus in on it. And so there's some complications there, and that's why it requires deeper conversation.
Yeah, I definitely think we should apply for the CMAQ funding, because you're right, it tends to be underutilized, so we have a greater chance of getting that funding. So I think it's hard for us to envision all of the lanes when from the one list, but I get what you're saying. Thanks very much.
BPU Board Member Groneman, you have your hand up. Go right ahead.
Just wondering if you had shared this list of projects with the Board of Public Utilities, and if there are any of these projects that would impact the BPU budget. I know that previously on the Leavenworth Road project, we kind of got in on that after the fact and scrambled to try to get funds budgeted for the infrastructure and things that we needed to do. So I'm just wondering if these projects have been shared with the BPU, and that make sure that we we'll have adequate time to get it in our budget.
This is
Yeah,
Jeff Fisher. Go ahead,
Go
Troy.
ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, it's Troy, is this $25 and $26?
Correct. This is federal fiscal year 25 and 26, which starts in, I think, November of 24, somewhere around fall, winter of 24 from KDOT side. So that means we could bid a project as early as roughly November 24 or as late as October of 26. That's how that works.
And Mr. Groneman, so that alone gives us time, but we can certainly, whatever the final list is, we'll send it over to Mr. Johnson and his team.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Groneman. Really, really good point. I just wanted to say that I like your number 1 and number 2 and projects. And I also am enamored with the Quindaro project for 23 million because that's mirroring the Leavenworth Road project. I also really like, frankly, the safe routes to school. So if there's a way to package that, as you say, such that it could combine into that Leavenworth Road project, I'm telling you, those are my 4. Commissioner Kane?
Yes. How much money do we have set aside for the Leavenworth Road project already?
Currently, there's $7 million.
Right, there's $7 million. And then that's just in that intersection is where all that money is going to be spent, right?
Correct.
But if we take this money, it'll go all the way out to 128th Street, which would also provide a sidewalk for the kids to get to school, because we don't have any sidewalks that I know of to any of the schools except out of my neighborhood. So most of the kids have to walk on the side of the streets. So 2 would be the top 2 that are on the list. And then we need to figure out a way somewhere to do something with the Quindaro, because that is something that we need to highlight, and we need to figure out a way, not just with asking for money from them, but maybe asking for some money from other places to help fund that.
Jeff Fisher here, if I might jump
Yes,
in.
please.
I do believe that top 7 is a good portfolio to go to Mark with.
Excellent.
Yeah, and just be prepared that the Quindaro, we might have to scale it, like Troy suggested.
Right. Well,
Yes,
I
and-
like that a lot. Commissioner Johnson?
No, I agree. Just because of what's happened in recent years, I think you all, I'm glad we're refining the process, but we have done such a good job in the past that once these projects get to Mid-America Regional Council, they also tend to score well with them as well. And what happens is that competing cities and jurisdictions get a little snarky because we have done so well in recent years of ranking these things. So I do believe that the more finite that we can be, the better. I don't know if I want to do 7, but certainly I know when we've gone in the past, and these might be for different dollars in the past, but we've had 2 or 3 of them, and 2 of them were 1-2 in terms of what the grade was across the entire metropolitan area. So just know that once we duke it out here, I think Commissioner Bynum said cuss and fuss here, then it goes on to a more regional debate as well, because of the fact that I think we've kind of figured it out here in Wyandotte County. Thank you, Chair.
Sure, excellent. Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. I just wanted to share my support for doing the top 7. I think that's a good step forward and a good place to start. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now, this is a voting item, Jeff. So, it's a request for approval to submit marked grants. And we've got a level of consensus around the top 7, most certainly the top 4 to 5.
Commissioner Mike Kane, move for approval of the top 7.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Markley,
Johnson.
second.
Commissioner Ramirez.
All right, we have several seconds. I love it. I'll take, Madam Clerk, were there any comments from the public on the item?
There were no comments from the public.
Thank you so much. We have a motion and a second, and roll call, please, on the item.
Roll call, Groneman,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Brown. I'm sorry, Bynum.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. That motion carries. Thank you all for that excellent conversation. This does conclude Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. I really appreciate everyone being here. Mr. Groneman, thank you very much. We are adjourned. I will turn it over to Commissioner Markley for Administration and Human Services.
Thanks, everyone. All right, before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of the meeting. The public may also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting. The public will also have the opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or via Zoom from the lobby of the municipal office building. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call, Kane,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Bynum,
Here.
Markley.
Here, thank you very much. There were no revisions to tonight's agenda. Our first order of business is the approval of minutes from our November 15th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Johnson move for approval.
Second, Ramirez.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Kane,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Markley.
Aye, thank you. All right, item number 1 is a resolution reallocating $400,000 in funding from public facility projects in the Park Drive Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy area to the county's only domestic violence shelter. Wilba Miller is here to present. Welcome, Wilba.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We had set aside $570,000 to the Park Drive Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy area last year during the budget process. We got word from the domestic violence shelter that they needed a roof badly. The facility provides critical and sometimes life-saving services to one of the county's most vulnerable populations. Out of the 570, after we take out 400,000 for the roof, the remaining 170 would be budgeted to in the same project, the NRSA project, to be used to install a new disc golf course at City Park. We're asking for the standing committee to forward this for a public hearing on March the 31st. During that time, we'll have a 30-day comment period for the public, and then a resolution and approval of the amendment on March the 31st also. I would like to note that Miss Erica Rowland, Executive Director of Friends of Yates, and Miss Ladora Lattimore, prior Executive Director of Friends of Yates, are both online if anyone has questions for them.
Thank you, Wilba. Commissioner Bynum?
I only have one question, Wilba, and because it's you and you know the book inside and out, is it feasible and possible? Is it allowable to divert, if you will, the NRSA money?
Yes, ma'am. We actually every year went through the budget process to set aside a certain amount of money, and for public facilities and improvements. With this amendment, we will go into the HUD system and say, this is still a public facility and improvement. It's just, for a domestic violence shelter, which will be looked upon very gladly from HUD.
Sure.
They want to make sure that, especially now during the COVID pandemic and all the other funds that they've set aside, that we're using our regular CDBG funds to help this shelter.
Thank you very much. I would move approval.
I do have one more question from Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Wilba, what is the total cost on the replacement?
The roof, we're estimating less than 400,000, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough because of all the construction, increases that we've been receiving. We don't believe that the disc golf course will take the whole 170, but we will look for other funds if it does exceed the 400,000. Is that what you were asking, Commissioner?
I was waxing so eloquently. Hopefully I can sound as eloquent now with the mute being unmuted. So if the amount does not come up to $400,000, will those funds be redirected back to the NRSA area?
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Okay. And so right now we are the only funding source for this particular project. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, I will second.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a motion in a second. I have Ms. Sieben with her hand up for comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that this was something that came up over the holiday, and Wilba contacted me because she was very concerned that we not miss this opportunity to help these folks. And additionally, because we do have timeliness of expenditure issues that are always seemingly ongoing with our HUD dollars, that this was one that we knew could meet the timeliness deadline. And so that's why we're excited to bring this forward. And again, the NRSA doesn't require that we spend our CDBG money there, but we have been designated that for the last number of years, obviously, to help with that program.
Thank you. All right, we do have a motion from Commissioner Bynum, a second from Commissioner Johnson. Clerk, were there any comments from the public, or are there any hands raised in the attendee areas?
No comments from the public, and there are no one in the lobby.
Fabulous. Then I will ask for roll call on the motion.
Roll call. Kane.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wilba. Our last item is an update on our Human Services Department. Phyllis Wallace is here, I hope. Yep, I see her. She is here to present for us. I will turn over the floor to her.
Hi, good evening. Phyllis Wallace, Director of Human Services. I'm going to share my screen. I have staff who volunteered to speak on this evening. So let's get started. Are we seeing the full screen? Or
I'm seeing the slideshow, but I'm not seeing it as its full screen version.
let's see.
So if you can put it in presentation view.
All right. All right.
There we go.
All right, awesome. So we start out with our mission, and we have 3 divisions: Human Relations, Community Developmental, Disability Organization, Dispute Resolution Mediation. And I wanted to share a fun fact with you guys that we represent 5 languages in our department. So we're pretty proud of our diversity. So with that, I will introduce my next speaker, which will be Melissa Fernandez. And she will be discussing with you some just overview of human relations. And then we'll go, she'll introduce the next speaker from there. All righty, Maritza.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. So my name is Melissa Fernandez, and I am a program coordinator here at the Human Services Department. And as Ms. Wallace mentioned, I will be talking to you a little bit about the Human Relations Division. So the Human Relations works to promote ways in which people and communities learn to get along and to safeguard equal opportunity for all. Human relation activities help communities become more harmonious, respectful, and cohesive. Human relations uses the tools of fact-finding, staff training, information sharing, community education, mediation, cultural literacy. A part of our charge as the Advisory Commission on Human Relations and Disability Issues, or for shorter ACHRDI, is to discourage and prevent prejudice, intolerance, bigotry, and discriminating practices against persons of any background. Our advisory commission role is one that helps to foster communication with the community to ensure that there is respect and harmonious relations among racial, religious, ethnic, and minority groups, including people with disabilities. The Advisory Commission has made some strides in these areas by being the first county in Kansas to champion the passing of the non-discrimination ordinance to include sexual orientation and gender identity for the protection of the LGBTQ community, along with hosting and sponsoring the annual Metro Human Relations Summit 2 years in a row. The Human Relations Department is funded by general funds to support and work of the Advisory Commission. ACHRDI sponsors various trainings to include fair housing, landlord-tenant implicit bias, cultural proficiency, and ethics. The Human Relations Commission is visible in the community through participation in several activities such as the Night Out Against Crime, the Wyandotte County Ethnic Enrichment Festival, Community Resource and Health Fair, and the annual Picnic in the Park for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, just to name a few. The current initiative for the Advisory Commission is centered around housing and collaborating with other entities on housing issues. The work of the Human Relations is important work, and that's why it is equally important to have vacancies filled. We have a number of vacancies we hope to have filled soon. In addition, we have some upcoming trainings within the next few months, which include the rights and responsibilities for tenants, which is taking place March 10th, then landlord education training, which is taking place April 14th, and the implicit bias, which is on April 7th. The Human Relations Division provides tenant training and education to empower citizens about their rights. In addition, we give guidance to landlords who are new and unfamiliar with the processes. Our inbound calls average about 80 to over 100 calls a month, depending on the season. Our high call volume is usually around summer and winter. It is also important to note that the Human Relations Division also accepts applications for the disabled parking signage on residential streets, which my coworker, Mr. Carr, will speak on later on the presentation. For now, I will let Ms. Davenport speak on the WCDDO division.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Somhak Davenport, and I am a program coordinator here at the Wyandotte CDDO, and I am actually going to be speaking a little bit on the CDDO. So you might be wondering, what is the CDDO? It's a single point of entry to access services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. From here on out, I'll refer to it as IDD. We also perform gatekeeping for individuals seeking entry into state institutions, such as KNI, which is Kansas Neurological Institute, and Parsons. In addition to, we perform level 2 assessments for nursing facility placement of individuals with IDD. There are 27 CDDOs across the state of Kansas, and we are governed by state statute KSA 39-1803. And there are currently close to 800 people in Wyandotte County who identify as IDD. We hold a contract with the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability, which is KDADS, to perform a number of tasks. And see, what you see on that slide is just kind of a list of the things that we perform. We perform intake and eligibility, performing functional assessments, providing options counseling, building our capacity to ensure we have enough providers to serve our clients, and also maintaining contact with individuals on the state wait list. The CDDO is funded by 65% of state and federal funds and 35% mill levy. And we're allotted additional mill levy to offset any emergent needs for individuals we serve in crisis. So the next important question is, how does one become eligible for CDDO services? So some of the criteria is you have to be 5 years of age or older. You have to have a diagnosis of intellectual disability before the age of 18. And this obviously has to be by a licensed healthcare professional. You also have to have a diagnosis of developmental disability before the age of 22. And lastly, you must be determined program eligible by the CDDO. And some of the types of disabilities that fall under a preview are autism, cerebral palsy, severe epilepsy, and Down syndrome. So the next slide shows a list of services. And these are the services provided within the IDD waiver. As you can see, to name a few, we have assistive services, financial services, overnight respite, residential supports for adults and children, and the list goes on. So the services you see fall under the state's home community-based service program, in which IDD is one of the 7 waivers. And there are 40 contractors who provide these services. The CDDO only provides oversight of the individual and provider services and ensures services paid for are actually being provided. The average cost of services for an individual on the IDD waiver is about $50,000 annually. So that's a good chunk. The state of Kansas currently has a wait list on these services. And the next slide shows some of the data on the statewide wait list. So it's about 9,100 individuals enrolled in the HCBS program, which is the home community-based service program that I mentioned earlier. There's 4,500 individuals on the statewide wait list, and about right under 200 individuals here in Wyandotte County. And the wait date goes back to about 2012. 70% of individuals have a Medicaid state plan through Kane Care. The average wait list for these services is about 9 to 10 years, and we're on 2022, so that's pretty lengthy. And the reason for the lengthy wait list is that because legislators have to appropriate funds for the waiver. So while an individual is waiting on the wait list, the CDDO utilized local dollars to remediate a crisis that may occur while individuals are on the wait list. So because of the funding, we've been able to successfully initiate projects such as what's shown on the next slide. So we have on the left-hand column, we have the summer day program, which is basically a 3-month period. So consumers, clients can explore and attend various agencies. We have a family subsidy program, which an individual can apply up to $1,000 to assist with any needs. We also have the tablet program. Due to COVID, these tablets were issued so clients can stay in communication with staff, with with providers and their case managers. And also it helps for educational purposes as well. We also have a great grant program, and they pay for services such as medical supplies, therapy, transportation, Special Olympics, just to name a few. And right now, I just want to take a moment to really just thank the Board of the Commission for understanding the importance of funding for our most vulnerable populations. So I just want to really say thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to also mention that there are 2 required committees within the CDDO community. We have the Council Community Members and Quality Assurance Committee. So these 2 committees consist of volunteers made up of consumers, guardians, and providers, and many more. And they provide cohesive planning, revision of policies, and advocacy. And these projects and these committees help to ensure health, safety, and well-being of our individuals. So on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the things we've done. So beyond our contractual responsibilities, we've also sponsored numerous community events and training. And these trainings have really been there to educate and promote and outreach in the community. Some of the things we've done, we've had annual picnics, which basically brings awareness to the IDD community. And it's for everyone to kind of gather and eat good food and listen to music and have a lot of fun. Another event that we've held was the gala, and it's really reminiscent of a school formal. So everyone dressed up, and it was just a nice little prom for all the individuals. We also have the quarterly Zoom hangout, which is the clients, they'll participate on tablets and they check in with us. And, we actually check to see how they're going or how they're doing and things like that. And for example, we had a Halloween party and all the consumers were able to dress in their best Halloween costumes. And we had a little party for them. So that was really fun. So we try to check up on them. We also have a community resource health fair, and that's basically various agencies coming together to provide information on health and legal information, insurance information, and things like that. We've also held the Hats and Gloves Drive at the Willa Gillis Center this past winter, and it was a huge success. We've also done a project search program, which we've partnered with the School of Blind. And really the goal of that is for students to participate in various internships to really be able to help them obtain employment in the future. We've also provided 2-day training for providers. So members of the police department, members of APS, members of Social Security office, Medicaid, Medicare, they all come together to really just present all of their information and to really train these providers. We also have the Wyandotte Advocacy Resource Network, where it's basically a support group for guardians and caretakers within the IDD community to get together to really talk about things. So really, I just wanted to end. I would like to emphasize this. So what's unique about our clients that we serve is that the clients require lifelong care and support needs. It's a full-time commitment. It's very costly. So please allow me to put a little bit of perspective into this. I don't know if any of you have children or not, but I have a 14-year-old. And let me tell you, I am preparing her for when she turns 18 to leave the home. But I'm preparing her to spread her wings, and I'm preparing her for college, and so she can become independent in life. But however, with these individuals with IDD, some of them may never see these milestones. Some of them may never leave the home, and some of them may never ever become independent. And some of our individuals require 24-hour care. It's a lifelong commitment. It's just everything that we've taken for granted. And some of these individuals have to really, like I said, just really commit to this. And so with that said, being able to obtain proper funding and resources is very critical in helping these individuals and families so they can at least try to thrive like you and I. So we're very, very appreciative of local funding, and we know that the money helps these individuals and families tremendously. And I want to say we wouldn't be able to do any of this without the collaboration of entities and other departments of the UG. And I just want to leave you with this. It really does take a village to raise a child. So thank you so much for your time. And I am going to turn it over to Mr. Greg Carr.
Thank you very much, Samak. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Carr. I am a state-approved mediator for the Office of Dispute Resolution. And I have been the mediations counselor in this department for approximately 12 years. In April, I will probably get approved, state approved, to do domestic cases also. So expanding our offices. Let me just explain what the meaning of a dispute mediations counselor is. Basically, a mediator is not an arbitrator, doesn't make the decisions, but rather moderates the negotiations, assists in exploring areas of compromise and finding points of agreement of settlement. Dispute resolution actually is kind of split up into 3 different areas. As you can see, it's dispute resolution / mediations / conciliation services. And I'm going to just tell you some of well, let me just also say that it is 100% general funding. And I've just recently Ended a 2-month training with the police department that we do on a regular basis. I work and interact with many different departments in the unified government, such as the police department, police records, the prosecutor's office, the municipal court clerk's department also. So I would basically consider myself as the middle person between the police department and the prosecutor's office. Dispute resolution handles only misdemeanor cases, no felonies. All domestic cases are directed directly to the prosecutor's office. So I'll give you an example of how the process works in dispute resolution and how we get to a possible mediation. So let's just say that an officer is called out to a scene of a complaint by a victim, or a victim goes into the police report desk to file a complaint against a suspect. If both parties are not on the scene, where the officer can give out a summons to both parties and hand out a court date, they have a 3-fold pamphlet that basically tells them to contact my office in 3 to 4 business days. That's when it will be available to me. One of the other benefits of that 3 to 4 business day wait is a lot of times the alleged victims have time to calm down, maybe change their mind, and not decide to prosecute, and they just let the case go. But if they do decide to move forward in the case, the purpose is to come to me so that I can determine by the police report whether we should move this case forward, if all the information needed on the report is on there, to move the case forward for prosecution, and also offer them mediation. The services or the complaints that we mediate are simply theft and misdemeanor criminal cases, misdemeanor criminal damage cases, money cases. The misdemeanors are $1,500 and less for petty theft, and $1,000 or less for criminal damage. Let's just say that the victim calls in, they want to prosecute or move forward on the case. The things that must be on the police report must be the suspect's full name, residential work or work address, date of birth. So those items must be on there in order to move forward with either mediation or a prosecution. The mediations are voluntary. If the alleged victim wants to mediate, what happens from that point is I have a letter that I will send out to the suspect, and it basically tells them we can resolve this possibly out of court with no criminal consequences if we can reach an agreement. Both parties must agree to the mediation for there to be a mediation. I will say that I'm proud to say that, and I won't take credit for it, but I will state that it's the process that 90% of those cases are resolved. I can't really recall a mediation where both parties agreed to it and it did not get resolved. So it does have very effective value in the system to help out the victim and the suspects. If they also choose to bypass the mediation and just want to prosecute, it is my job to make sure that everything on that police report that's needed to be on there is on there to move it forward. If it is not, I will direct them to what needs to be added to the report, and then they will need to contact the police report desk to get that added to the report. Once that is done, I'll move it to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office makes a decision whether to authorize or decline the case based on the report. Whatever their decision is, I will contact the alleged suspect and let them know, or I will contact the victim and let them know what the decision was. And if the prosecutor's office approves it, at that time, we'll set up a day and time for the alleged victim to come in to sign a summons for a court date. So we basically do dispute resolution, which moves it to the prosecutor's office. We also do mediation, which can resolve it without court fees, without time lost from people's jobs, without trying to press criminal charges. And a lot of times the mediations I have seen over my time as a mediator are usually mediations between people that know each other. sometimes friends, associates, who they really don't want to see criminal charges brought against them. They just would like to have some kind of resolution to their money, petty theft, or criminal damage. And again, like I said, I've never really seen the case that has not been resolved and both parties agree to it. The conciliation part is where the court will contact me and ask me to try to get a resolution for both parties. And at that time, once we get a resolution, and then we will close the case out. It will be put away, filed away, and then no more worries as long as the both parties hold their end up in the agreement. If in the middle of a dispute, one party comes up short and does not continue with their part of the agreement, do let the victim know that at that time they can move forward with further prosecution if they choose to. So some of the other things that the Office of Dispute Resolution handles is, as Ms. Fernandez stated, was we give out applications to those who request on-street handicap parking. We will send that application out. One side has the individual resident to fill out their side, and then to their physician stating what their chronic and permanent illness is to give them the ability to park on street. At that point, I will make an on-site visitation of the residents, come back to Ms. Wallace, and we will sit down and talk it over and determine whether they do qualify or not. We also handle tree disputes, property disputes, and I believe Ms. Fernandez also spoke about one of the other things that myself and Ms. Wallace handle are landlord-tenant issues. We give out a lot of basic general information for landlord-tenant rights, and we do have a training coming up March 10th, and then in April, I believe the 14th. So those are the different things that we provide through dispute resolution / mediation / conciliation. So if anybody out there has any kind of misdemeanor cases, you do not want to go to court, or you know someone who would like to try to get a resolution, feel free to have them contact our office. Just keep in mind, in order to have a mediation, there has to be a police documentation in order to move forward. So thank you again for the opportunity to share that with you.
Is that the last speaker?
Yes, that's the end of our presentation. If you have any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. I want to clarify just a couple of things, and I didn't do a good job of keeping notes on who was saying what when I was writing down my questions. So you'll have to help me out. During discussion about and I will not remember the full name, but the Human Services Committee, there was a comment about needing some appointees. So I just want to circle back to that for the sake of my fellow commissioners, because I believe that meant we have fallen down on the job in making appointees. Is that correct? Go ahead, it's okay.
Well, yes, we definitely have some spots to fill. So, but Allie, I believe Allie Porter is the commissioner's liaison. She would know and let everyone know who has an opening and what needs to be filled in that area.
So commissioners, if you are unsure whether you have an active appointment to that committee, please check. So they're doing some really good work. They're in fact one of those committees that I think at one point we were concerned about its activity. It wasn't functioning very well. So we got to get our people on there and have them appointed. They've been the people that are appointed have been busy at work. We need to make sure that they are supported by a quorum so they can be active and continue their good work. So like I said, not putting anybody on the spot, but commissioners, I just want to make sure we were clear when that reference was made that that's on us. We got to make sure that they have appropriate. It's okay, Phyllis, no, you're not in trouble. It's all on us. We need to make sure we're giving them proper appointments. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Phyllis, and your staff for the presentation. It's nice. I don't think I have heard from the Human Services Department or seen presentations since I was elected and I was able to tour your department. So it's nice to finally have you come back in front of the committee. The questions and comments that I have and need some clarification, because I did not know this was a thing until I went and looked at our ordinances. What does it mean that us as the Board of Commissioners is the governing body for the Community, Intellectual, and Disabilities governing body for the county? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, in a general sense, you got the Board of Commission is would be the controlling or the final answer on anything related to budget or what have you. So your role is similar to, any other department that you are working with. You would be the one who would approve anything that we had that was related to funding.
Okay. And then it mentions I can't remember the acronym, the advisory board, our Human Relations Advisory Board. To make an annual recommendation concerning the annual plan and budget. I'm guessing due to not having proper quorum in meetings, not having enough people. But has that plan have ever been shared with the commission of what that annual plan is of action?
Are you referring to our annual update?
I'm guessing it's the same thing. I'm not entirely sure.
So then, yes, we have made a presentation. We have not in the last couple of years, but I am hoping that with more elected onto our commission, we will be gearing up and ready to give you a good, thorough update sometime in perhaps May or June when the flow of your schedule is not so heavy.
Okay, no, I like that and I appreciate that. I was just asking those questions because I did not know this part. I believe I remember towards the beginning of my term, we voted on something like this and changing the boards. And so I was not aware that we had this, we were part of that or in that capacity. We unfortunately, I'm, please forgive me, my fellow commissioners. We don't as a commission do a very good job of making sure our boards and commissions provide updates to us throughout the year. So that's probably why I was not aware we considered the governing body for this portion. But I think it's amazing that we have this. I have two nephews who are autistic. And so having these community resources out there is amazing. And so I thank you for all that you do for the human relations portion to the dispute resolution. Thank you for all you do. I look forward to seeing your department more in front of us in front of our committee and the commission, because it's like your department does so much, but it's like a shadow department. It goes unseen. And so I want to make sure that everything and all the activities that you do are seen and that it's validated by us as your governing body. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
I will say, Commissioner Ramirez, I think, we were aware when we were going through the process of evaluating all of our boards and commissions. Like I said, we were aware that there was a problem with this committee. And at that time also, I think there were maybe like 2 people that were appointed to it and that the commission hadn't appointed the rest of the people. And we talked about, do we continue having this committee? And I believe we continue having it because it is required by that statute. We have to have the committee. So it's really critical that we as commissioners make those appointments because we're required to have this committee. Obviously that meant it was valuable at the state level, but obviously I think as we've heard tonight, it's really valuable to our community as well to have that advisory board functioning. So it's important to make those appointments. So check your list. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Chair Markley. Just a couple of quick comments, Ms. Wallace and your staff. Thank you. so much. I really appreciate the presentation, and it is a department that we simply don't hear from very often, and you tend to fly under the radar, and that's probably a good thing for you, but it's nice to hear from your employees and the work that you're doing in the community. And just to circle back to Commissioner Ramirez's comment, this is a department that prior to consolidation was a county department. And so it is mill levy funded. And so when us being the governing body is definitely a carryover from pre-consolidation days. This is a county side function, and it's probably still mill levy funded, and I don't want to speak out of turn on that. But at budget time, this comes to us as one of the handful of mill levy funded items, like the aging department, for example. And so we appropriate the funding through that mechanism. And so I just kind of wanted to bring that little bit of background and clarity to that part of the discussion. And just also, I would just ask Allie Porter if, so that we're not naming names tonight, if there are commissioners who need to make an appointment to this ACH RDI board, that she just reach out and notify those that still have an open appointment to make, because that board has kind of recreated themselves in a pretty amazing way and really wants to work. And they have produced some really good work. So with that, Chair, I will stop. But again, just my thanks to Phyllis Wallace and her team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We appreciate those kind words.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Markley. Just a hats off to Allie for keeping track of all our appointments, because that's 10 commissioners and plus the mayor, so the 11 people that she has to keep track of all of our appointments. So thank you for that, Allie.
Well, thank you, commissioners. And yes, I was pulling up my list. I won't name names, but there are some vacancies. And obviously, for anybody who's listening, you can find our boards and commissions application on our website.
That's a great point. Yeah, if anyone from the public is interested in serving on that committee, you can apply online or contact your commissioner directly. And yes, I second Commissioner Bynum's suggestion that Allie, if you just send out an email to everyone who doesn't have a currently seated appointment, that would be helpful, I think. All right, any other questions or comments? This item obviously is for information only. It was a great presentation. Thank you so much, Phyllis, and your staff.
I'm sorry, I did see Bridget Cobbins' hand up.
Oh, Bridget, go ahead.
Thank you, Bridget Cobbins, Assistant County Administrator. Just wanted to thank you, Commissioner Markley, for always allowing each one of the UG departments to come before Administration and Human Services to give an overview. We thought that it was very important from the administrator's perspective to give you an opportunity to see those departments that don't normally come before your body, just to give you an idea as to how many programs we have within the organization. And instead of just reading what the departments do during the budget time, we wanted to make sure every month that we bring a different department before your committee, just to highlight what's actually going on at the department level within the organization. So we definitely want to thank you for supporting that initiative from the administrator's office. And every month we'll have a different department before this body, just so that you can get a good understanding as to what is actually going on within the departments of the organization.
Thank you so much. And I do definitely appreciate it. And I think it's very valuable in budget season, as we're looking at that budget book, to be able to refer back to and think back to these different presentations and to actually know what those offices do and how critical they are to our community. So I definitely support the initiative. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Ramirez.
Sorry, just last, Phyllis, anytime that your department or the advisory commission has an event, please let us know. I would love to participate or just to attend the event. So please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we will do that. And you can start by signing up for the March 10th tenant education training that's coming up. It's one thing we enjoy providing the opportunity for the community to be empowered to learn about their rights, but we can offer it all day, but having folks actually attend is another thing, and just get some value out of it. It's a wonderful training. You get a lot of information, and so if we have folks out there who rent, this training is for you. Again, we'll have the landlord training coming up in April, which is equally a good training and a value to our local landlords out there. And then I'm also excited about the implicit bias training we'll be offering to the community, which is in total absolute wonderful training. And so just be looking forward to some more information about that. We'll get it out to all of the platforms and make sure everyone is aware, but we will most definitely invite you to any events we have coming up. Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you. And I would say if you're a tenant, go to the training before you have a problem. I think a lot of times people wait until things are falling apart and then they go to the training and then they missed opportunities that could have prevented a dispute with their landlord or an issue with their landlord. So if you're thinking of renting or if you're already renting, go to that training now. Keep yourself from having issues down the road instead of waiting until after there's a problem. All right. Any other questions? That was for information only. And that concludes our meeting for the evening. Thank you everyone for your attendance and your attention. We are adjourned.